Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual speaker series. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Dwight Ireland, and I'm the Vice President of US and International Sales at Speaker Spotlight. It's hard to believe that it's been 18 months since the announcement of a global pandemic flipped our world upside down. As a population, we've been resilient. We've adapted to wearing masks, social distancing, and in this industry, we've been able to pivot by switching to online learning and virtual events. As things start to reopen, what's been making headlines is the need for us to fill job positions that were lost at the beginning of the pandemic and the looming employee shortage. An HSBC survey released earlier this month polled more than 2,000 business leaders across 10 different countries and concluded that there's stiff competition for talent right now. Nearly half of the firms see salary and financial benefits as the main factor in securing new hires, whereas the other half see as much emphasis on purpose-driven policies as key drivers in the post-pandemic hiring spree that we're about to see. So how can businesses tap into the latter and be successful moving forward? We're living in an age of purpose, and there's no better speaker on this subject than the person I'm about to introduce. Afdhel Aziz is one of the most inspiring leaders in the global movement as business as a force for good. After a 20-year career as a global marketer at P&G, Nokia, Heineken, and Absolut Vodka, Afdhel is now the founder and chief purpose officer at Conspiracy of Love, a B Corp certified global purpose consultancy that helps Fortune 500 companies such as Red Bull, Microsoft, Mondelez, and Mars use culture and technology as a force for good. Afdhel is the co-author of 2 books, Good is the New Cool, Market Like You Give a Damn, and most recently, Good is the New Cool, The Principles of Purpose, which provides leaders with a roadmap to inspire innovation and new frontiers of growth. In addition, he also writes the Power of Purpose column in Forbes on the topic of business and social impact. Please welcome Afdhel Aziz.
Hello, thank you very much, Dwight. Thank you for having me, Speaker Spotlight. We love working with you guys. And thank you all for joining this morning for this conversation around the power of purpose. I'm going to do a short presentation for about 30 minutes. Please stick your questions into the Q&A, and we'll have 30 minutes at the end of this to answer all of them. I'm looking forward to getting into all of that stuff in a second. So let me dive in right now and start sharing my screen. So the topic of the talk today is really around the ideas in our new book, The Principles of Purpose, which we wrote really as a handbook for leaders as like yourselves, who are looking at how their companies can transform to be forces for good and forces for growth at the same time. My journey into this space started with 20 years of working at Procter & Gamble, Nokia, Heineken, and Absolut Vodka in London and New York. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles at my studio where I live. I moved here 3 years ago. And my journey into this space really began with writing this book, Good is the New Cool, Market Like You Give a Damn, which was an exploration of purpose-driven brands and marketing. It came out in 2016. And that really created the trajectory that brought me here to you today. Along the way, I started writing for Forbes, as Dwight mentioned, which gives me an incredible ringside seat to watch the purpose revolution unfold and interview the leaders and change makers who are really coming up with new models of social innovation. This also translates into my day job. I'm the co-founder of Conspiracy of Love. We call ourselves the world's most inspiring purpose consultancy. We are proudly minority owned and a certified B Corp as well, joining 4,000 other B Corps like Patagonia, Etsy, Warby Parker, and others who believe in business as a force for good. We've been privileged to work with these companies and brands you see on the screen here. It's fascinating that in every single category you can think of, CPG, tech, fashion, finance, this conversation around purpose is now at fever pitch. And we're privileged to get in the trenches and do this work every day, which really also fuels my insights as a speaker as well. Today, I want to talk to you about our new book, The Principles of Purpose. It's based on 5 years of research that myself and my partner, Bobby Jones, have done, going into some of the most successful companies on the planet, like Tesla, Patagonia, Unilever, IKEA, Lego, SAP, and others. And we really set out with the intention of writing a handbook for CEOs who were looking at this purpose revolution and trying to figure out how to transform their legacy organizations into purpose-driven ones. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the how. I'll start by talking a little bit about why all of this is happening right now. We talk about three tectonic shifts affecting 21st century companies. One is the rise of conscious consumers who want to buy products and services from companies that do good. Two is the rise of what we call activist employees who want to work for those companies and have a say in the values of the company and how it should behave towards society. And three is the rise of impact investing, ESG, and Wall Street waking up to the tremendous opportunity created by business as a force for good. So let's talk about each of these one by one. The first is consumers. There are by now multiple data points which show the importance of this audience, especially millennials and Gen Z, but now really also transcending to all the age demographics. This is an incredible piece of research from the Zeno Group, 8,000 consumers across 8 countries, and it showed that brands with a strong sense of purpose, people are 4 times more likely to purchase from them, 6 times more likely to protect the company in the event of a misstep, especially important in this age of cancel culture, 4.5 times more likely to champion the company and recommend it to friends and family. This is the holy grail of every marketer, which is word of mouth, and 4 times more likely to trust the company, which links into loyalty and lifetime value as well. So by pretty much every metric that a brand marketer could measure purpose, it is outperforming the competition in spades as well. It's summed up in this great quote from the writer Anne Lappy: "Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want to live in." And consumers have woken up and they're extremely aware of how what their beliefs translated into calls for action, how impactful that can be in an era where the playing field is level because of social media as well. It's led to the creation of new products. This is an interesting company here in Los Angeles, Aspiration, whose entire remit is around fossil fuel-free investment. I have an Aspiration 401k, and they've just launched a debit card and a credit card where every time you use it, trees get planted. And they even come in and help you do with your carbon offsets as a small business. So it's fascinating to see a whole new wave of product innovation happening to cater to this new demand. This is also translating into growth. This is the Kantar Purpose 2020 survey, a fascinating piece of research. Brands recognized for a high adherence to purpose have grown at more than twice the rate of others. So there is now a correlation between doing good and doing well, and it's happening on a global basis as well. Let's switch to employees. In our new book, we talk about the rise of the activist employee, and we use that phrase very deliberately. These are the same young people who have been protesting in the streets for racial justice. And so why would they stop protesting when they walk in through the front door of your work? They no longer feel like they need to leave some of themselves behind. They want to bring their full selves to work, and that means they have high expectations of the companies they work for. 64% of US millennials won't take a job if an employer doesn't have a strong CSR practice. 85% of Gen Z employees, who are now going to be, I believe, 30% of the workforce by 2025, believe companies have an obligation to help solve social problems. And so when we go and speak to chief people officers and HR professionals worldwide, we say to them, if you want to future-proof your talent for the next 2 generations, you have to make sure that they see how their work ladders up to something more than just a quarterly profit goal as well. There's more fascinating data. This is the Edelman 2021 Trust Barometer. Consumers and employees expect to have a seat at the table. 68% of consumers and 62% of employees believe they have the power to force corporations to change. 50% of those who are employed say they are more likely now than a year ago to voice my objections to management or engage in workplace protest. And we're seeing this happen in companies across the board. Whether it's Google, Amazon, or Wayfair, there is now active and open dissent when employees feel that the company or the leadership of the company don't stand up for what they believe in, and they aren't afraid to show that publicly and openly as well. The most recent example right here in Los Angeles was Activision Blizzard, the video game company that makes Call of Duty. They had 3,000 employees walk out and protest against the accusations and allegations that Activision had created an unfair and unsafe working environment with allegations of sexual harassment. And this led, by the way, to the president of Activision Blizzard being fired and stepping down. So there is a real warning sign here. Uh, Leaders need to listen to these employees, understand what's going on, and create a dialogue with them. Otherwise, they risk this kind of thing happening more and more often. You're also seeing incredible stories like this one with Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, coming out, who spent 6 months gathering data internally to build a case against Facebook to show how the company was deliberately hiding information about how their product was causing misinformation and further harm to the public good as well. And coming out and unashamedly saying, I'm doing this because I want to fix Facebook, not because I want to take it down as well. Um, Finally, let's talk about Wall Street and let's talk about the rise of impact investing. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of what's going on. This is Larry Fink, the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, the largest institutional investor on the planet, with $7.2 trillion assets under management. And every year he's come out and said some variation of this theme. Profits are in no way inconsistent with purpose. In fact, profits and purpose are inextricably linked. And he's not wrong. When you look at the data, you are seeing that Wall Street and in retail investors are waking up. 85% of investors considered ESG factors in their investments in 2020. 29% is the percentage by which key ESG funds outperformed the S&P 500 in 2021, which may explain this massive inflow of funds. Bloomberg estimated that $53 trillion of funds would be ESG by 2025, which is 1/3 of all assets under management. So there is a veritable tsunami of capital flowing into companies that are well managed, well governed, and which operate in a sustainable, ethical manner as well. This may be also why you're seeing the leaders of large American corporations stand up and say, shareholder value is no longer our primary objective. Our approach is now about stakeholder values and looking after all of our stakeholders as well. This is the Business Roundtable announcement that came out a few years ago as well. Again, the data shows that people expect CEOs to lead on societal issues. This is the Edelman Trust Barometer again. 86%, I expect CEOs to publicly speak out about one or more of these societal challenges. CEOs can no longer stay silent. They have to get involved. There is new expectations from their employees and their communities to participate as well. This is also fascinating. Business is expected to fill the void left by government. 68%. CEOs should step in when the government does not fix social societal problems. 66% CEOs should take the lead on change rather than waiting for government to impose change on them. And I love this one. 65% believe CEOs should hold themselves accountable to the public and not just to the board of directors or stockholders. So we're in a completely different context now. And for a modern day CEO, they really have to understand that this is the new normal and new expectations. You're also seeing really interesting things happen in the financial markets. You're seeing activist funds like Engine Number One recently win 2 board seats at ExxonMobil and promptly try and put into practice actual climate change reform as well. Engine Number One also recently just launched an ETF, which allows everyday investors to get involved in taking positions and being able to influence shareholder votes at annual general meetings as well. All of this adds up to this idea that purpose is the new digital. If you add in conscious consumers, activist employees, and impact investors, you see these tectonic shifts happening to companies in much the same disruptive way as the arrival of digital was 10 years ago. And this is why we really preach to companies, you need to get ahead of this. You need to change to address this as a competitive edge. Or watch your competition embrace it and fly right by you as well. Now, one question I get asked all the time is, well, what's the difference between purpose and CSR and sustainability? This is the most elegant metaphor that we can come up with. You know, just like digital was siloed and in multiple departments across companies, doing good was the same. Corporate social responsibility was doing good towards your communities. Sustainability was doing good towards your planet. ESG investing is the face you show to shareholders. Cause marketing is doing good towards consumers. D&I and volunteering and giving an employee brand are all to do with employees. And product innovation is now increasingly seeing a purpose infused in it, as I'm going to show you in a second with MasterCard. All of these different silos are now kind of weaving together into this bigger rope of purpose as an umbrella term, where instead of them being acting separately, smart companies are weaving them together to create really differentiated and powerful strategies. So, what we did over the last 5 years was to go into some of these companies and analyze how they were using purpose in the most possible, the best possible ways as well. And what we came up with was this model called the purpose flywheel. So we went to look these companies who are doing incredibly well. They're category leaders in multiple instances, and they're really doing a fantastic job of leveraging purpose to drive performance. This is purpose in service of profitability and social impact. It's not an either or situation as well. And the model of the flywheel is what we uncovered inside there. So it starts with leading with purpose, helping CEOs and leadership teams identify a clear purpose and inspiring that senior leadership team to take charge. That then leads to working with purpose. This is educating, inspiring, and empowering employees to contribute their gifts and passions in service to their purpose, to bring their whole selves to work. And then this unleashes a tremendous amount of energy and potential and create with purpose, inspiring organizations to design breakthrough purpose-driven activation commitments, KPIs, platform strategies, products, etc., that turn purpose into positive societal impact and business growth. So I'm going to talk about each one of these in turn and explain a little bit more about it. So in our consulting work with Conspiracy of Love, we spend a lot of time helping to define a purpose statement and the framework, which is the core first step. It is the DNA of the company or brand. And since there's a lot of different terminology floating around, I thought it was worth taking a moment just to show you our model and our methodology to explain what each of these words mean. So purpose is the highest order of it. It is why your company or brand exists in service of making a profit and adding good to the world. The mission is what the company does every day in order to achieve the purpose, in order to bring it to life, the day-to-day work of the company. The vision is what kind of world will be created if the mission is achieved. The values are then how you behave as a company, the beliefs, philosophies, and principles that drive your business. And the commitments, which is a really important part of our model, is how all of the above is measured in KPIs and goals, whether they're financial or ESG goals as well. Put all of those things together and you have really the compass heading to start things out on. One of the most crucial parts of this actually is the purpose statement, which is a simple sentence that everybody in the company knows that gives strategic clarity to what the company is there to do and is inspiring in its own way as well. Here's a few examples of purpose statements that we love. And the simple way to think about it is really that your purpose is at the intersection point between what the world needs and what your company is uniquely positioned to create. A Conspiracy of Love, we come and do a 10-week sprint in the case of companies to figure out what that is. And finding that sweet spot in the middle is really key. So here's a few examples of purpose statements I love. This is Steve Jobs era Apple. It's a bit of an old one, but I love this one. At Apple, we create tools for the mind that advance humankind. So much power in it, so much ambition in it. I would argue that maybe Apple has lost some of that ambition in the last few years, but man, when it was working, it was doing an amazing job. Nike, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. I love the little asterisks. If you have a body, you're an athlete. I always say, you haven't seen my body, you might second guess yourself, but let's move past that. But you see this in everything Nike does in terms of its product innovation, creating things like Nike Plus, or even in its racial justice in the world, using icons like Colin Kaepernick as well. Tesla, another brand that lots of people admire, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And what's really interesting is that a few years ago, it actually said sustainable transport. So just by turning that one sentence, one word in that sentence around, it signaled that it wasn't just interested in being a car company. It wanted to become an energy company and own the solar panels on the roof of your house, the battery pack that stores it, just like I have here in my house here in Los Angeles as well. Patagonia, incredible brand that I love. Patagonia is in business to save our home planet. It is short, urgent, to the point. It is meant to incite action around the topic of climate change. And that's what everything the brand does is focused on. So hopefully those statements helped you understand a little bit about the idea of how you can articulate a purpose in a really energetic and clear way as well. Let's talk about working with purpose now. So really the secret sauce that we saw in these companies was they created a space for employees to bring their whole selves to work, and they created conditions that allowed them to flourish and thrive and blossom. There are a few preconditions that we saw that were really necessary, and it's summed up in this principle in the book that we talk about. Purpose needs to be built inside out. It really needs to authentically reflect the passions and the hearts and minds of the people who work at a company first before going externally. Some simple facts that to help frame where purpose is going. This is a really interesting thing. I'm sure many of your companies have employee volunteering and fundraising opportunities. Even something as simple as this has a massive impact. This is a Benevity survey which said that companies that offer that have 57% less turnover. Now, when you think about the fact that the average cost of replacing an employee is about 1.2 times their annual salary, you begin to see actually the financial ROI of giving people a place to very simply find some meaning in their work as well. I love this stat. Companies with the highest percentage of women board directors outperform those with the least by 53%. This is why we need more women on boards, because actually it helps the company make more money. And I love this stat. Companies with above average diversity have 19% higher innovation revenues. And it's easy to see why. If you have people inside the company who reflect the glorious diversity of the world, they're able to see opportunities that a more homogenous culture won't be able to see. This picture right here sums it up perfectly for me. This is the Nike Pro hijab, part of a range of clothing that Nike came out with in about 2016, 2017, to address the needs of Muslim women who wanted to have more modest sporting apparel. And so here's the question: why did it take a company of Nike's scale and ingenuity until 2017 to realize that there's 500 million Muslim women on the planet and some of them like to jog? I would argue it's because they didn't have enough representation in their senior leadership to look at this incredibly large market and say, we need to start innovating for this audience as well. So this is why we say diversity is really the only global growth strategy you need. If you have people who represent the audience that you're trying to reach, that's the best way to understand their needs as well. And we Dwight alluded to this in the beginning. This is also fascinating. The great resignation that is happening. We feel like there's a giant game of musical chairs happening right now. And when the music stops, those companies who have not only fulfilled all of the quote unquote functional benefits, salary benefits, things like remote work, but also the sense of purpose and meaning are the ones who are going to attract the best talent when the music stops. Here's some numbers to back it up. So literally 1 in 4 US employees plan to change jobs in the next 6 months. In fact, I saw a Microsoft piece of research who said it was 41%. 70% of employees said that their sense of purpose is defined by their work. And 2/3 of US-based employees said that COVID-19 has caused them to reflect on their purpose in life. So again, by creating places of work where people feel like their work matters and they find meaning alongside money, this is really, I think, becoming the new normal for companies. My favorite example to talk about how a little story about how purpose can permeate into every level of a company is this wonderful story. Maybe true, maybe not, but either way, it's a great story about President John F. Kennedy walking around NASA in the 1960s and seeing a janitor mopping the floor. And according to the story, he walks up to him and said, "Excuse me, so what do you do here?" And the janitor stands up very straight and says, "Mr. President, I'm here to put a man on the moon." And that story shows how, done right, purpose can cascade and permeate into every level of an organization and show people how, no matter how humble the task they have, they can find a role within this larger purpose of the organization in a way that instills pride in their work as well. This is, by the way, a large part of the work we do with Conspiracy of Love. We have a methodology called GPS to Purpose, which is amazingly transformational. We've now gone and done this at companies like Athleta, HP, Facebook, Microsoft, with 700 employees at a time. And it is a triangulation exercise to help employees find their own individual purpose. It's a great metaphor. Just like when you're lost, you turn on your GPS and your phone and your car. When you're kind of in a moment in your career when you're feeling a bit lost or your morale is low, finding your purpose helps get you back on track. And the GPS acronym is very simple. It stands for Gifts, Passions, Service. Your gifts are your corporate superpowers. Those things that your 10 closest colleagues would say, yeah, that's what she's really amazing at. The passions are what you're passionate about as a citizen, the issues and causes that get you mad, that break your heart. And service is where you can be of service to, whom you could be of service to with your gifts or passions, to your fellow employees, to the communities that you're part of, to the cities, to the country, to the planet. Going on this exercise in the form of these 3-hour virtual workshops that we do is remarkably transformative, especially when we go into companies who have a very clear employer purpose and we're able to link it to that of the individual as well. Finding just enough connective tissue for that person to say, here is why I love working for this company. It fulfills my sense of purpose is, again, I think, really becoming the new expectation in this day and age. And finally, let's talk about create with purpose and now how you take all of this externally. I want to talk about a brand I've been privileged to work with, MasterCard. We recently worked at Conspiracy of Love with Raja Rajamanna, the CMO, to create the MasterCard Marketing Institute, which had an entire module on purpose in it as well, and really got to know this incredible brand inside out. This is MasterCard's purpose: connecting everyone to priceless possibilities. Simple, to the point, but has a wealth of richness in it and a wealth of different ways they bring it to life as well. And one of the places they do it around is the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. It's really fascinating how MasterCard is taking the idea of everyone, connecting priceless possibility to everyone, and turning it into inclusion to look at entrepreneurs around the world who are in need of training, funding, coaching, mentoring. And by investing in these entrepreneurs globally, they create this cycle of inclusive growth by creating business innovation and investment that leads to rising income and job opportunities, leading to a more expanding and prosperous middle class and more robust domestic demand. And keep in mind, this is a business strategy as well. As more and more entrepreneurs and businesses thrive, MasterCard's hope is that they will use MasterCard as their primary means of doing credit card transactions as well. MasterCard has also done really interesting things around helping female entrepreneurs. They have a ranking around in 58 economies to start to look at who's out there and help lift up female entrepreneurs and give them some love and some light as well in really beautiful ways. And one of my favorite recent examples of MasterCard showing that inclusivity is really around this transgender non-binary initiative called True Name. So oftentimes when somebody changes their gender, it's really hard for them to get a new card with their new name as well because of a whole bunch of regulations. And MasterCard decided to say, this will not be a problem with us. We're going to make this very simple for you so you never have to suffer the indignity of being called by your old name or your dead name, as it's called. And I think it's just a wonderfully compassionate and forward-thinking way for a credit card and financial services company to signal to this new generation of Gen Z youth, many of whom are transgender or non-binary, to say, we hear you, we see you, and we support you as well. So a wonderful example of a company who has taken that core purpose of connecting people to priceless possibilities and found really substantial ways to bring it to life around helping entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, and doing outreach to the LGBTQ community and many other things as well, which we don't have time to get into. It's summed up in this really great quote from Peter Diamandis, the founder of X Prize and the Singularity University. The world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Problems are gold mines for companies who are brave enough and innovative enough to try and solve them. At last count, solving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals would unlock $11 trillion in wealth. There is a tremendous opportunity for companies out there who want to shift their business model into fixing the problems of the world profitably as well. Some final thoughts before we wrap up. We're really hopefully coming out of COVID-19 globally in many parts of the world. And the expectation for companies and brands has evolved over time. In phase one, it was really around responding to the critical needs to safeguard society. This is the era of companies and brands donating PPE and sewing face masks and making hand sanitizer. Then we're coming out of the relief phase where brands were really about providing fulfillment and connection to each other as we were isolated all these times. And this is really where we now find ourselves in the rebuild phase, where we believe in this mantra of building it back better. There were many flaws in capitalism before this, and we have an opportunity to address some of those in a completely transformative way because of this open-mindedness that has been caused by COVID in terms of so many aspects of our life, how we work, how we live. And so we really believe that purpose is a starting point. It's a source code to reboot capitalism. And if we can do it company by company, category by category, that's how you can get to a completely transformed version of capitalism, which is fairer, more sustainable, more just, and more ethical as well. Our friend Lisa Ukman likes to say we are moving beyond corporate social responsibility into corporate social opportunity. Problems are gold mines for companies brave enough to want to go and fix them. In all of this, by the way, you personally are key to this. Your values drive your value. We like to say today a 21st century leader should have the brain of a CFO, the heart of a storyteller, and the soul of an activist. Finding that passion or cause that you really care about and finding out how you can weave it into your work is really one of the most powerful things you can do in this moment. I'll leave you with one final quote from the wonderful Brené Brown, who I love. We can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both. I hope seeing the tremendous opportunity out there to do with conscious consumers, activist employees, and impact investors shows you that we are in this moment where purpose is the new digital. And I hope this talk has given you courage to go out there and explore more of those things. And thank you very much for giving me some time.
Thank you, Afdhel. That was fascinating and excellent. Um, we have some questions from the audience, and if you would like to ask a question to Afdhel, please type in your question in the Q&A section. So the first one is, do different industries need to focus on different goals depending on the client and the product or service being offered?
100%. Yes. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the idea of swords and shields. And this is one of the principles in the new book. To explain the definition, when you think about the wide range of issues and causes out there that companies couldn't get involved in, it's kind of dizzying to think about it. But the way we do a sorting and a hierarchy is some of those issues are shields, which you need to have a strong position on. You need to have a plan in place. I would argue that sustainability is a shield for every single company. You need to have a plan to get to net zero by 2030. By the way, my personal bugbear is companies saying we're going to get to net zero by 2050. Nobody cares. It's too late. But I really want to see a plan to say how are you going to handle your packaging, your waste, your energy, all of those things. The sword, on the other hand, is the issue or cause that the company seeks to solve profitably in the world. And I think that's really where the rubber hits the road. And that's where putting purpose into the heart of your commercial or business growth strategy is the difference between true purpose and what came before. What came before was almost philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, donating to causes in a defensive way. But the truly purpose-driven companies, we call them purpose Jedis, are the ones and say, no, the way we're actually going to grow is by going out there and tackling some of the world's biggest problems and creating a model to do so profitably as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question. Have you done workshops with government public service leaders?
This is a great question. No, I don't think so. I'd love to come and talk about it with government leaders. I think government has to be a crucial part of this problem as well, in solving the problem as well. And we really preach a hybrid approach to solving problems. together. We talk about government as being able to raise the floor while private enterprise can raise the ceiling. If you think about things like cafe standards for cars, that's what government regulation can do, is increase mileage per gallon. But private enterprise can invent electric cars and find a whole new way to deal with those issues as well. And so both of them working in tandem is remarkable. And we've seen many excellent examples more on the city level than at the federal or state level. But as somebody wise once said, government and business are the only things that work in trillions. And so we need them both to really work in harmony. So, yes, I'd love to come and do something with government leaders as well.
Thank you. When going through the clarity of purpose process, do you worry about losing some of the people, or some of your people, I should say?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that what we preach is um, don't quit your day job, right? So we often say uh, purpose is not about you quitting your job and going and digging wells in the Sahara. That might make you feel good temporarily, but you are way more important and valuable if you can think about bringing purpose into your current job with all of your resources and networks and experience and opportunities. That's a much more useful place, a starting point for people to leverage what they have in service of their purpose as well. But yes, you do absolutely get to a point, and I got to that point myself in my own career, where you've stretched your purpose wings as far as you can, and whatever the company does it's time to move on. And so I'd say it's okay. It's part of attrition. You kind of want to have people who want to be there, and as long as you have enough space for engagement and growth and retention, then people, I think, will find a renewed sense of purpose to stay with the company for a much longer time.
Thank you. And what about small teams? How do you go about the purpose clarification process with a group of, let's say, 50 or less employees?
Yeah, we do that kind of thing all the time. In fact, so yesterday I was in Sonoma, up in Napa, in Northern California, with a luxury spirits company, Hoteling and Co., which had 50 employees, and it is eminently possible to do that. The same process applies in terms of discovery and getting to clarity as well. Actually, it makes it even shorter than 10 weeks because you don't have quite as many stakeholders to go through as well. So, yeah, we do it with organizations of every size. And we truly believe that it should be every size because you need disruption happening at every level of a category as well.
Thank you. Uh, and what advice would you offer not-for-profits who are looking to attract the attention and support of a corporate entity or corporation?
Oh, it's a great question. So, in our first book, we talked about the rise of the new nonprofits that we were seeing at that time, people like Charity Water or Pencils of Promise. And these nonprofits were behaving in ways that we hadn't seen before. So, for example, they were using the power of data and technology in really unique ways to be able to track progress accurately, but also tell a story about the impact that they were creating. In fact, they were doing it so well that we recommended brands could learn from them as well. Similarly, some of them were using the power of pop culture and really understanding that stories are one of the most valuable assets a nonprofit has. And by being able to tell those stories in powerful, emotive ways, they were able to attract the attention of brands as well. But I think the most important thing I would say is do some homework and look at the lay of the land and identify those brands who have a common purpose to you. I'll give you an example from our consultancy work. We work with Mondelez, an incredible company. We've worked on 9 of their brands now, and we were able to partner one of their brands, Sour Patch Kids, who had decided to make a commitment to racial justice in the form of $1 million going into Black scholarship funds. We were able to partner with them with the Thurgood Marshall College project, which is one of the oldest and most prestigious Black scholarship fund partners in the world. And the conversation, which may have been strange considering Sour Patch Kids is a candy brand, actually worked wonderfully because both parties saw the integrity and the common purpose that they both had around serving a third group, which was underprivileged students who wanted to go to college but didn't have the funds as well. So that's probably the most important thing. Don't just fire a like buckshot out there. Spend some time figuring out which brands are signaling that they're interested in the same issue or cause and could be your allies as well.
After this is less of a question, but more of a concern that there are a lot of corporations, companies that are talking about making change, but we're seeing very little of it. I mean, we saw a lot of this shortly after the George Floyd murder. As it relates to the makeup of corporate boards, are you seeing any change, or is this just a lot of talk?
Yeah, there is a lot of purpose washing going on that we need to hold companies accountable for. You know, it's happened several times in the last few years. George Floyd and Black Lives Matter being a key instant. You know, companies coming out and making really flamboyant, large commitments, but not actually following through. And I think that's kind of the thing that which I write for Forbes as a journalist, and I follow up with companies and go, "Hey, that thing you said that you were going to do, when are you going to do that?" And I really do think it's up to all of us in order to hold companies accountable. Fortunately, by the way, this is, I'm not going to say the upside of cancel culture, but we're now living in a new era where consumers and employees have as much power as companies in terms of being able to get a message out and challenge companies to stand up to their commitments. And so that's what gives me hope that there is now both internally and externally stakeholders who want to hold companies accountable as well. And finally, final point on boards, I think this is where boards need to get ahead of the curve because they're the ones charged with the future vision, the long-term vision of the company. And they need to see this massive transformation happening in real time right now and work with the leadership teams and stakeholders to prepare them for it. So I think boards have a huge role to play in terms of being stewards of this transition as well.
Thank you. And how do you engage employees who are not activists, but the ones that are resistant or prefer comfort over courage?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I call it a spectrum of altruist to activist, right? So there are a subsection of employees who are militant and who are out there kind of openly challenging leadership, writing letters to the New York Times, marching outside. But I would argue that the large majority of employees are altruists, right? And who do want to do something positive and just need to have the right context to do it in. So what we're seeing is almost a pyramid approach to impact within companies where there's usually like one big strategic focus, the sword, that everybody in the company gets around. And that has broad buy-in because they've done the work of talking to employees and going, is this an issue or cause that we think should be a strategic focus? Microsoft is a great example with its focus on disability that has gotten tremendous traction from employees. Um, but at the bottom of the pyramid is where volunteering and giving lies, and companies providing opportunities to match funds or to freely allocate volunteering hours or to donate skills is really where then a company can deal with the sheer diversity of issues and causes that their employees are passionate about and still show support without sacrificing that strategic clarity and the continuity that you really need in order to tackle some of those problems as well. So creating spaces for everybody to get involved in their own way is really powerful. We call it time, talent, and treasure. Uh, Employees can give in different ways. Some of them may want to give their time and volunteer. Some of them may want to use their talent, which is skills, and going and helping out in different places. Some of them may want to actually put money in as well. So my advice is create a flexible approach, which allows employees to show up with whatever they can use at that time.
So it's not that you're going to get 100% buy-in at every company in terms of, let's say, purpose-driven volunteer efforts, things like that. It's more that you're allowing this opportunity to be made available to the majority of people, and that's really who you should be focusing on.
Yeah, again, going back to the analogy of purpose is like digital, right? There's no one digital medium. People use multiple mediums all the time, whether it's Slack or social media or CRM systems. And so approaching it in that same way and saying, let's create an atmosphere which is supportive, but also give people multiple outlets in which to activate their purpose is really key.
Thanks. And what's the biggest mistake corporate leaders make when thinking about purpose?
Hmm. I think the thing where the deck is stacked against corporate leaders is in the quarterly cycles that many companies operate in, especially publicly traded ones. It creates a sense of myopia and a short-sightedness, which makes them unable to see long-term vision and see problems coming over the horizon. Everybody has their head down trying to hit that number for the next quarter, and so I think that's one mistake when there isn't enough space created to be able to think about that bigger vision and that bigger mission. That then everybody can kind of align themselves around. I think the other problem is leaders don't do enough work on their own purpose and what they feel passionate about, and we highly recommend that leaders do that. I go back to that quote. Today, a 21st century leader needs the brain of a CFO to be able to think about the business opportunity and frame purpose in terms of its positive commercial impact. They need the heart of a storyteller to be able to explain it to their employees, explain it to their stakeholders, explain it to their board in a way that makes sense. Oftentimes we say purpose is strategy made story. It just gives people that instant understanding about why they're there. And the solo the activist thing may be the hardest thing, right? It's thinking about what do they really care about and how do they want to use their own personal capital in order to make a dent. A wonderful example I always hold up is Anne Mukherjee. She is the chairman and CEO of Pernod Ricard USA, the company I used to work for, which owns Absolute Vodka, Jameson, and a whole bunch of other spirits brands. And she's used her position as the first woman of color to lead a big US spirits company to talk about things like sexual assault, to talk about things like responsible consent in the context of the alcohol industry. And she, in her own words, has turned her pain into power. She's using her actual true self to go out there and put forward an agenda of how the spirits industry can engage with the issue of sexual consent, just like it engaged with the issue of drink driving, and really try and create a social movement where all the other companies get on board to create a different cultural context as well. So I really think that's the most important thing leaders can do is spend some time understanding what they get passionate about, because then it's authentic, then it's real, and it's coming from a wonderful place as well.
And that sort of speaks to this idea of courage over comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul Pullman, who we interviewed in the book, who is a wonderful supporter of ours. He's the ex-chairman of Unilever, and he currently runs an incredible organization, bringing together leaders across categories or within categories. He talked about the root of the word courage, which comes from the French word cœur, which means heart, right? And he says that's what we need now, leaders to balance their minds with their hearts, and to have the courage to speak up and speak out on issues, to be able to do so strategically and clearly in a way that doesn't create a firestorm, but really then shows to their stakeholders that they're serious about getting involved in problems around the world, and doing so in a thoughtful way as well.
Thanks, Afdhel. I have one final question before we wrap up. So, what are the biggest barriers to companies truly finding and unlocking their purpose?
I think it's the siloization that I mentioned before is a big problem. There are wonderful people doing things in different departments, but they never talk to each other. And in fact, in some instances, they're in competition for resources, right? And a wise CEO is somebody who pulls back and says, actually, we are way more effective and powerful if we can orchestrate this together. And I can have my CSR person talking to my D&I person and my sustainability person and my product innovation person as well. And so silo wrecking is something we love doing when we go into companies at Conspiracy, and helping people see each other, as allies internally, uh, all in service of a higher purpose, I think is really crucial as well. And then I think the other thing that really is a new need is to be able to make a business case for doing good. And this is really speaking to the ROI of purpose, which I'm a geek about. If you Google my name and ROI of purpose, you'll find a Forbes article I wrote about it. Part of the problem is that the value of purpose is divided up around multiple silos again, right? So there is no common way to measure the impact of a company doing something positive across all the different metrics: revenue, brand impact, employee engagement, employer brand. And so one of the things we really preach to companies is go in and build a bespoke model so you can truly track the impact of doing good and be able to give it a proper quantification as well. So you, in the future, can make investment decisions and say, actually, this is working fantastically. We should put more money into doing more good as well. So yeah, that's why I'd say wreck some silos and come up with a bespoke model as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Um, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. Afdhel, this was a wonderful presentation. Really, truly appreciate it. And I think we can wrap up now. So we're going to sign off. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and love to stay in touch. Take care.